And CBSA, after due process, has the legal obligation to remove people.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Canada Info channel. My name is Wolo. I am an CICC based in New Brunswick, Canada. I used to be a Manitoban. Still love Manitoba and enjoying New Brunswick right now. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I talk about immigrating to Canada, life in Canada, and everything that you need to know. To my loyal subscribers, I want to say thank you so much for sticking with me and watching my videos, and I see you in the comment section as well. Thank you so much. So today's video is about the 4.9 million people that IRCC is saying will voluntarily leave Canada by the time their visas expire. And of course, you and I know that that's just stories, like stories, because CBSA has not been enforcing deportation as much as they are supposed to do. And I would share the video where Tom Kimish, I don't know whether that's the pronunciation. Well, they usually don't pronounce my name well too. Anyway, so I'll show you the video where Tom was interviewing or interrogating Mark Miller, asking him on the issuance of temporary resident visas and how he's been tracking people who have voluntarily left Canada after their visas expired or before their visas expired. So after you watch this video, I will come back and analyze or pick out the key questions that Tom asked in the video, and I'm going to analyze it based on my own experience.
Minister, your department tabled documents with Parliament that show that 4.9 million visas are going to expire between September 2024 and December 2025. How will we know how many of those actually wind up leaving?
As you noted, MP Kamich, that when people come here, in many of their visa documents, they undertake to leave. As part of the levels plan, there will be some visas that are temporary in nature that will not be renewed, and those people, when they undertook to come here, will be expected to leave, and that is simply a fact. We'll have to monitor that carefully. There are many measures within our department to monitor these things, but it's one that,
Minister,
given the volume in question, it's something that we'll have to be very careful in supervising.
1 second, Mr. Coach, I stop the work. Let him finish. And you can ask. Would appreciate that. Okay, so I'll go to Minister. You have finished your remarks. Okay, Honourable Member Kimmich, please.
Minister, I wasn't asking about whether they will leave or not. I'm asking you how will you ensure that a person whose visa has expired will leave? We know that just on study permits, there are 766,000 expiring by the end of December 2025. How will your department ensure that at the end of those study permit periods, those persons will leave?
Again, there are many ways that people leave the country, Tom. The vast majority leave voluntarily, and that's what's expected.
So explain those ways. How will you ensure it?
We work with our partners, including CBSA, to investigate, obviously, and prosecute those who violate immigration law. If someone refuses to leave, they're in violation of the law. And CBSA, after due process, has the legal obligation to remove people. Again, this isn't something that is taken lightly, but in the vast majority of cases, those people that have come here temporarily and do not have the right to stay, in fact, leave.
So then my next question will be, your plan calls for a cap on international students, 485,000 2024, 437,000 2025. There's been adjustments to those. So obviously there's a discrepancy between the two. So how many do you project will leave the country then at the end of December 2025? All 766,000? What's the proportion? What are the forecasts the department has?
You'll have to be clear on that. A discrepancy between what and what?
Between the number of people who will be allowed into the country and then the number of people who will be on a study permit that's expiring. So those who are expiring the end of December 2025, how many of them will actually leave? Are you saying 100% will be expected to leave, or are you going to send CBSA to chase all 766,000?
You know that is not what happens. There are a number of things that occur. Some people actually get renewals. Some people get postgraduate work permits and stay a longer period. And we do work with CBSA to monitor these things. And when Statistics Canada reports on these, they take into account a whole variety of factors in estimating how many people are here and how many people have left.
So at the end of this year, 2024, how many international students do you expect to leave, and how many have left so far when their study permits expired?
How many have left as
So
of November today? We don't
Or
have that
October
number.
1st? Can you provide those to the committee?
I don't know. We could look into it.
Minister, how can you not know? It's in the immigration levels plan. There's a bunch of charts on page 22 starting about temporary resident immigration to Canada, persons who are in the country. It's in the immigration levels plan. It's in there. So how can you not know what that number would be? There's an order paper question, these government documents that were signed by your parliamentary secretary that were tabled with Parliament that has the number. So there's supposed to be expiring study permits in December, 84,642, and then in November, 36,130, in October, 10,182, in the month before, 127,348. So how many of those people are still in the country? How many have received the renewal? And how many of them have CBSA now looking at them?
What I can provide to you as a number is the expected decrease over that period over the 3-year period, which is about 450 the first year, 450 the next year. That's net, incoming and outcoming, with a slight increase in 2027.
So again, so how are you going to track then those whose work permits are expiring by the end of 2025? Again, it's in the hundreds of thousands. You're not giving me much confidence, or Canadians confidence, that you have a plan, because we have a breakdown by month how many student visas and work visas are expiring, and you haven't provided any information on the means. How are you going to do it? You say you have partner organizations, you're working with people. What are you actually doing? What's the process? How are you going to ensure people abide by the visa conditions?
As I said to you before, just like the vast majority of people that come to the country, on a temporary basis, the vast majority leave. In some cases, increasingly many, I will concede, people decide to choose. They are in a situation of irregularity in that case. Once they have exhausted their remedies, they are removed by CBSA.
So that's interesting, because you've made public statements repeatedly claiming and saying and alleging, based on IRCC data, that is not what's going on. And that's why the IRB now has a record number of backlogged applications for asylum. And you have said that tens of thousands of them are actually international students who are staying longer to applying for asylum, and you're claiming they don't have a legitimate claim to make. That those are your quotes, the headlines you're generating by doing communications out there. So are you saying you don't have a plan, that this is part of your plan to have an increasing backlog at the IRB to deal with it?
Thank you. The time is up. But Minister, you please respond.
There are an increasing number of international students making asylum claims, I think with very little hope, given their conditions. They, whether you like it or not, are entitled to a form of due process in this country. I don't think you would purport to deny it to them. Are there things we can do to make sure that's more streamlined? I would encourage you to follow the next few weeks as we propose more amendments to the immigration system and the asylum system. But let's recall that every party in this House, except for the Liberal Party, voted down our asylum reforms in the budget. A bit shameful, considering that Conservatives had proposed these in earlier years, but you chose to play politics about it. This is a system that is in need of reform, and it's in need of reform in the right way.
So one of the key questions that Tom asked was, how will the government ensure that people whose temporary resident visas have expired will leave the country? In that particular question, Macmillan was unable to answer it properly until somebody actually slipped a paper in front of him to kind of trigger what he could answer. Unfortunately, CBSA is taxed with the burden of enforcing the immigration laws. When it comes to enforcement, CBSA is in charge of that. And CBSA is an arm of IRCC that I feel is not active. That's the word I will use. They are not as active as IRCC. I mean, yes, IRCC have done the work of issuing visas, but in terms of people who are complying with those visas and abiding by the rules and regulations of IRCC, it is actually CBSA that has that role. So it is now time to highlight what CBSA has been doing in terms of enforcing removals. And that's what I feel about that particular question. Now, number 2 question was, what mechanisms are in place to track those whose visas have expired? Of course, no mechanism. Number 3 question is if the government can provide statistics of the number of people who voluntarily left Canada after their visas expired or before their visas expired. And Mac Miller was saying he was going to provide that information. But of course, he has to liaise with CBSA to actually get that information, because if you want to look at it, there are lots of people whose status have expired and have gone under. And study permit holders, visitor visas, work permit holders, they have their numbers. And it's very funny because the government is actually trying to align the numbers of temporary residents versus the numbers of future temporary residents. They want to know the number of people who have left, and that would impact the number of people whom they would approve to come in. I don't know whether you get what Tom was trying to get out from Mac Miller. He wanted to know, okay, if you approved 100,000 people to come into Canada in 2024, out of that 100,000 people, how many of them left? That's out of the 100,000 visitors visa, study permit, work permit, they have voluntarily left Canada. How many are remaining? How many people will renew? How many people will be eligible for PGW? How many people will become permanent residents or who have received an invitation to apply or provisional nomination and are in the process of becoming permanent residents? Now, the number, based on the analysis that they will get, will determine the number of people that they would ordinarily approve to come into Canada in 2025. So if they don't get those numbers correctly, it means that the whole idea of putting a cap on temporary residents for 2025 is defeated, because you brought in 400,000 people. You're expected to know if those 400,000 people will now either become permanent residents, workers, students for those who are extending their studies, or visitors record for those who are extending their visitors record who are still staying, versus the number of people who dropped by the wayside, who maybe encountered 1 or 2 issues as students, encountered 1 or 2 issues as a worker, encountered 1 or 2 issues as a visitor, and then dropped by the wayside. Out of those who are dropped by the wayside, how many of them have claimed asylum, and how many of them are under, and how many of them have left? That is the number that Tom was trying to get from Mac Miller. So that number will now determine the number of people that they will approve to come into Canada in 2025. So it's a tricky thing, because if CBSA is not doing their part, CICC will not be able to get the numbers to determine if truly they want to issue 300,000 visas in 2025. So that is why you heard that they are going to be making adjustments to the temporary resident visa plus asylum immigration system. They want to make more reforms. And you could even hear when Mac Miller was saying that they had proposed reforms before to the asylum system, but the House kept refusing those reforms because, I mean, asylum system is tied to United Nations, of course, you know, but there has been loopholes and there has been abuse. And this is my own suggestion to CICC. In those forms, those application forms that people fill, please put one question there. Do you want to seek asylum in Canada when your visa is approved? Put a question. You know the forms I'm talking about. IMM 1294 form, that's for study permit. IMM 5257 form, that's for visitors visa. IMM 1295, that's for work permit. And the new application portal, they should include that question. Why I'm saying this is because once they include that question, it will now automatically know the number of asylum claimants that they should be planning for per year. As long as that question is not included in the application form, people will continue to come in as visitors and as students and as workers, and then once they fall out, the next loophole they look for is to claim asylum, to just buy time. The purpose of why people are, or why students or workers are actually claiming asylum, is to buy more time to gather more money before they will ask them to leave Canada. Konima die, Konima burial. That's my own opinion. I feel that they should work on a lot of reforms, and it starts with the application forms, the application to come to Canada forms. That form is very critical to the number of people that they will allow in. It's very critical to CBSA enforcing removal orders. But the question is, can Canada actually remove 4.9 million people? Or do you expect 4.9 million people to voluntarily leave Canada? I don't think so. So this is information I felt I should share. And what are your thoughts? Please, I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Is my suggestion a good suggestion? What do you think? That's what I've been thinking of. If my suggestion is a good one, please let me know in the comments. And I also want to mention that hopefully soon I'll start going live on this YouTube channel. I'll come on live. I just want to, organize myself in such a way that once I come on live, I won't have issues. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video.